Morning, Kumara Malkamoda. Today's daf is daf nun base, and and the last thing we were trying to learn is that we brought a pasuk regarding we pouring the sharayim, and Rabbi Shmuel said that we don't need a pasuk because we have a kal v'chomer, and the kal v'chomer was that if we had three times the word mizbeach ha'olah. So he said you don't need a pasuk with that because if the leftover of the chatas and sharaim don't really matter, they don't do any kapara, and yet they still have to be poured on the side. Then surely that when you sprinkle the oila, the two sides of the oila, the two corners, the opposite corner has to be with the side on the mizbeach and not on the southeastern corner which doesn't have a side. I don't need a pasuk for that. I have a kal v'chomer for that. And Rabbi Kiva says the same thing, but he adds the word not only that by a chatas the blood is not mechat, but it also does not even coming to kapara. And we want to know what is really the difference between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel. They're both saying really the same thing. Rabbi Kiva adds those words. So we said the difference is whether the shirayim are ma'akiv or not. Whether the shirayim, in other words, even though Rabbi Shmuel says it's not a kapara, but he doesn't say the ain't a boy in the kapara. In other words, Rabbi Shmuel holds it is ma'akiv. It's holding back, and as we explained yesterday, because the zrikas that you did will not count until you also pour the balance down the side. And Rabbi Kiva says no, that not only that it's not mechaper, it's also not ma'akiv. Rav Papa now comes along and says, I disagree. I believe that Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva both agree that the shirayim are not ma'akiv. In other words, if the blood spilled out or there's no blood left, it doesn't matter. So what's the difference in the two kal v'chomers? Says the Gemara, we're right in the middle of the page of Nun Beis Amud Aleph. Rav Papa Amar Kuli Alma Shirayim Ein Makvin. They all agree that shirayim is not ma'akiv at all, the leftover chatas, but they're talking about a particular kind of a chatas, and this is a little bit different. We're talking about by a bird, by a chatas of a bird. Instead of using your finger to sprinkle the blood or putting the blood in a keli, you have to bring the neck of the bird as close as possible to the zbeach, and you squeeze, and you squirt out the blood, and then the blood that didn't get squirted out, but there's still blood left inside in the neck. That blood has to then you press it against the wall, and you continue squeezing. That balance. That shirayim, what happens? That's nothing to do with the shirayim that goes on the side. That's called the mitzvah or the mitzvah. That papa kuliyamo shirayim generally by karma chatzas enamakid. Halcha b'mitzvah chatzas even makid. Who had the leftover blood could have a pasuk that says chatzasi. So we would have thought that maybe the leftover, that all the, according to one opinion, all the blood that remains in the neck also has to be squeezed out in order for it to be, in order for to fulfill your obligations here. And that's the machlekes. But regarding shirayim itself of a karma chatz, the leftover blood, if you don't pour it out, if you have no blood left over, it's not makiv. How do I know that? Tanya kavos is a papa. We learned it like a papa, so we'll bring a brayso that eventually proves our papa's point. It says in the brayso, it says in pasuk, by a parka in Mashiach, it says you should pour the blood, you should sprinkle the blood on all the counters of the bayach. And then it says, if it kol dam hapar, all the blood of the par, yishpach yisayid mizbeach oila. Now the word hapar is totally extra. Could have just said it's kol dam. We're talking about the part. The leftover remnants of blood should be poured down. Ma tam lemer hapar. Why in the world does it add the word hapar? It's teaching you another part. That we're talking about Parkay Mashiach. If the kohen, the anointed kohen, did an aveda, he thought it was mutter, brings his carbon and you sprinkle it inside, and then the balance of the blood you pour it in the outside mizbeach ha'olah, and we're going to learn from here another part, the power of Yom Kippur. Limud par Yom Kippurin, what sheton matan domim liyisoid. That the blood that you sprinkle by the par Yom Kippur also should be done by the yisoid, like we said before. Divrei Rebbe. These are the words of Rebbe. Says the Gemara, Rebbe said, Rabbi Shmuel says, I don't need a pasuk for that. I don't need a pasuk to teach me that. Because kal v'chomer. I can learn from Parkay Mashiach without the pasuk, just having a kal v'chomer. A Parkay Mashiach is not a chiyuv. What do you mean not a chiyuv? Who told you have to do an aveda and then bring the carbon? Don't do an aveda. You don't bring the carbon. It's one of these like tzitzit. You don't have a four-corner beged. You have no mitzvahs. So it's not it's a mitzvah kiyumis rather than mitzvah chiyuvis. So therefore, a par kohen Mashiach, which is not a mitzvah chiyuvis, because if the kohen gadol didn't do any averis, he'll never bring this carbon. Right? If he didn't, is madach a par kohen Mashiach, mish einich dam lefim chayva, never comes in as an obligation. Yet tone yisaid, yet it has to be sprinkled with a yisaid. In other words, it has to be in a chashuv way. So mish einich dam lefim chayva, par yom kippur, you have no choice. Now you have an obligation to bring it in. Ein din should tone yisaid. Surely it has to be sprinkled with a yisaid. So that's what Rabbi Shmuel said. You don't need a pasuk. Rabbi Kiva said, he says a similar thing, different kavachemer, but the same idea. You don't need a pasuk. The blood of the parkei Mashiach is only done by the heichel. You sprinkle it in front of the pareiches and on the inner mizbech, but you don't bring it into the kodesh kodashim. So it's not so chashiv. I don't care in that prat. Yet when you saw it requires to be sprinkled with the yisoid, where there's a base in the in the mizbeach and not the southeastern corner. Is mi shenich ledam chayvel lifnai ulifnim. The power of Yom Kippur, which goes all the way inside the Kodesh Kodashim, ain't no din shaton yisaid. Surely it needs a yisaid. Yachal, I would have thought Yaakvenu. So I would have thought now that we don't need whether Bishma or Rabbi Kiva. Now that you don't need the pasuk anymore because you could have gone with. So why taka does the pasuk say par, which refers to the par Yom Kippur? It must be to tell you we have a rule. Whenever it says an extra pasuk or double, it comes to be ma'akiv. Yachal Yaakvenu. Maybe it's coming to tell you that it's ma'akiv if it's not done this way. It says in the pasuk, "V'chila mechaper." It's we would have thought that the leftover blood. In other words, we would have thought that the sharaim of the par of Yom Kippur is what do you call it? If you don't do it, it's possible. It says in the pasuk, "V'chila mechaper zakodesh." Once you concluded of doing all the kapara, which is mefedish in the pasuk, then Shmuel call them. You finished all the kaparas. This din, whether you learn out that you from a kavachaymer or from a pasuk, doesn't matter. But it's not written mefurish in the pasuk, so therefore that is not ma'akiv. What's ma'akiv? V'chila mechap. If you did whatever it says in the pasuk here, you finish your kapara. So the Gemara. So the shvicha shirayim is not mentioned. It's not ma'akiv. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. So following your logic, like when you have a kavachayim, so you don't need to learn about what the yisoid, the whole idea of yisoid, the shirayim has to go to yisoid. So then that's like a better question. The very original pasuk, which is parkei Mashiach, where the Torah says pour it down the yisoid. What do you need a pasuk for? You can learn from a regular chatas. Make a same kind of a kavachayim. We're asking a question now. If you tell me it's a kavachayim that parkei Kippur you can learn from parkei Mashiach. Mazel parkei Mashiach requires that the shirayim goes the yisoid. Surely parkei Kippur because it's more significant. No, so why do you need a pasuk parkei Mashiach? Parkei Mashiach is far more significant than an ordinary chatas. An ordinary chatas is only done the outside. You do shirayim. So surely a parkei Mashiach, but you do on the inside. Surely you should do shirayim. What do I need a pasuk for? Same question. Think about kavachayim with a parkei Mashiach. Let's learn from Seir of a Nasi. Let's from the Seir of a Nasi. You don't spray it inside the base of Mikdash. You spray it outside the base of Mikdash. You spray on the mizbeach oila. Outside the outer mizbeach, not the inner mizbeach. He's ma'atal like this. The Seir of a Nasi, when he made a mistake, and also you got to do this in mizbeach oila. By the Seir of a Nasi, there's loy chayva v'loy mitzvah, right? You never bring it in. The Seir of a Nasi spraying it never goes inside the heichel. It's always done. Everything is done like an ordinary chatas on the outside mizbeach. Yet ton yisai, what do you do? The shirayim you put in the yisai. It says in the pasuk, is misha nich l'dam lifnim. So what about parkei Mashiach where you actually have to sprinkle, also the inner mizbeach? Who cares? Use the same kavachayim, and then continue. So then, if the pasuk does say that you should bring in, maybe it's ma'akiv that the shirayim by the parkei Mashiach. If you don't do it, you haven't fulfilled your obligation. Therefore, it says the pasuk changes the syntax. Everything else it says, the kohen gave the blood and the kohen did this, did it as if this is all part of the process. But when it comes to the dam hapar, it says the eis kol hadam hapar yishbach, like a future. You should pour. You should, as if to say, but if you didn't, you didn't. Because it changes the format of the word, the syntax. The eskol hapar yishbar not garkosov say the Torah turned it around and changed it. Everything else is you have to do it. The nos not claiming them. You did it completely, and we just moved on and on. But now when it comes here, it says you should. The Torah changes what turns it into, and I say you should do it. But if you didn't, you didn't. The also shiari mitzvah. and it turned it into the remnant of a mitzvah. Tell you what, that shiraim are not ma'akiv. So, okay, so here we see clearly that Rabbi Shmuel himself holds that shiraim are not ma'akiv. So this is a proof to that puppet. There's no machlekes Rabbi Shmuel or Kiva whether shiraim are ma'akiv. They're arguing this. What are they arguing there? They're arguing about a dam, about a korban chatas of a bird, chatas oif, the leftover bud in the neck, whether it's ma'akiv or not. If you didn't squeeze it out. Says the Gemara, you're telling me that they're arguing of the mitzvah chatas oiv, the squeezing out the remnants of the blood by a bird, if it's ma'akiv or not, and you're telling me there's no holds it's ma'akiv. Rabbi Shmuel learned v'hanisha bedam yimotza, that it says in the pasuk that whatever is left over in the blood you should squeeze out to say his bech. V'hanisha yimotza, v'she'enish lo yimotza. That if let's say there's nothing left, then don't worry about it. In other words, don't. If you hold it's ma'akiv, means you have to make sure there's a little bit of blood left in the neck so that you can do the mitzvah. But if there's no blood, it's not ma'akiv, because if you hold it's ma'akiv, you have to shut another bird to be able to do that. But that part of it.
Some over in order to.
Yeah, but if you didn't, it's not. You're not yaitz. You got to do it again. So clear Rabbi Shmuel holds it's not ma'akiv. So you're right. Today Tanoi aliba de Rabbi Shmuel. We have two Tanoim according to Rabbi Shmuel. Comes along Rabbi Chum and he says, I have found you another Tana who holds that shiraim is ma'akiv. Okay, you proved to me that side Rabbi Shmuel, side Rabbi Kiva holds that shiraim are not ma'akiv, but I'll show you a Tana that holds that shiraim are ma'akiv. The Gemara, the time we learned in the Braisa, it says in the pasuk, "A koyin hamechata oisa," that after the koyin does the avodas and he sprinkles the blood and everything else, is the what? He's the one who eats it. In the basement, kodesh should be eaten. So it says hamechata oisa, the one that brings it up, and he sprays the blood and finishes the kapara. What do you mean by oisa? It's oisa coming to remind something, and that to tell you that what, if you did it properly, then you finish the carbon. Go ahead and eat it. If you didn't do it properly, then finish the carbon. What do you mean? What didn't you do properly? What did you do properly? So we learn this. Remember, carbon chatas you have to spray above the line, and carbon oil is below the line. And by chatas oif is dafke the other way around. Chatas oif you spray below the line, and the oil you spray above the line. So this is what the pasuk tell you. If you did oisa the correct way, oisa shenitin dambala maila, only if you sprayed it above the line. Well, oisa don't matter not if you sprayed it below the line. Amrid, you say l'chayim. Why would you need a pasuk to tell you? Why would you think that it would be kosher? The Torah says that a korban chatas you have to spray above the line. So why would you think that it's kosher below the line, that you need to give me a pasuk to tell me that no, you saw that only if you did above the line? Where are you coming from that you even need a pasuk? Why would you think that it's kosher? Miklal, because Shnema, it says in another pasuk. I'll give you an example. By korban chatas, there's another pasuk which says a certain requirement, and we know that it's not important. Not that it's not important, but if you didn't do it, it's not ma'akiv. So we would have thought this particular requirement also. If you didn't do it, it's still all right. Which requirement? In the pasuk says, "V'dam zvochecha yeshafech." You have to pour it on right on the mizbeach of the Eibush on all four sides. L'madnu l'nitin b'matan arbish, and we learned from there before. She'im nitin matan achas kippur, but the evidence the Torah says you got to do it on four corners. You did it on one corner, but the evidence is all right. So we see the requirement is not so important. It's not so significant. It's not ma'akiv. So maybe there's a requirement also above the line. If you didn't, so if you did it below the line, maybe it's good enough. And therefore, we have this pasuk to tell you that no, it's not that you should know you got to do it correctly. It has to be above the line. Says the Gemara, the dinu, but also it makes sense that another reason we would have thought in logic that it should be all right if you do it below the line. What do you mean? Nemru damim lamaila. It says by a behema you got to do above the line. But by a bird it says you got to do below the line. Ma damim ma'amudin lamata. When it comes to the din of doing it below the line, v'nitin lamaila. If you did it above the line, loy keeper, it's not. If you did not follow through, it is possible. Is af damim ha'mudin lamaila, so to blood above the line. Im lamata loy keeper is no good either. So my question is, why do I need a pasuk to tell me? So this is Medina is now another question. Why do I need a pasuk to tell me that it's possible if you did it below the line? Of course it's possible. Just like the din by a chlor, by a chatas oif, which is supposed to be done below the line. If you did it above the line, it's possible. So too chatas or behem. If you did it above, you're supposed to be above the line. You did it below the line, it's possible. Why do I need a special pasuk hamachata oisa to tell me if you did it correctly above the line, then it's kosher? Why would you think it's kosher without it? They have this other dimion to a bird. We're there. If you don't do it correctly, it's possible. Tell him, no, that does not have any bearing here. No, I'll tell you why. I would think there's a difference between a bird and a behemoth. I would have thought bird talk is not kosher, but a behemoth, if you did it below the line, it's still kosher. And that's why we need a pasuk. Why would you think different? You know why the bird below? The bird that belongs below the line has no connection to the half of his mizbeach above the line. Nothing to do with it, ever. In any process, any stage of this bird's chatas, so therefore it's possible. What happens to the chatas, the leftover blood, after you spray? You put it in the bottom of the bed by the side. So there's a connection by the chatas to the bottom. So therefore, we would have thought that even if you spray the whole thing below the line, because there is a connection, a relationship between the bottom half of the mizbeach and the chatas. Some of the blood is going to go down the mata, the shiraim. So therefore, we would have thought that is kosher. So the Gemara, and that's why you pasuk. You can't think that way. You can't say there's a difference between chatas beim and chatas because the chatas the pnimi will prove to you. Sheyesh mehen kared b'chutz. Right, there is part of it. The shaddai. What happens to the leftover blood of the chatzah pnim they hit the claim Mashiach? Let's say you have to bring the leftover blood outside. But if you did the first blood outside, it's still possible. You're svared that because it has a shaykhis to the outside, because the shiraim goes, it means it already has a connection and should be kosher. That's what we'd have thought. So how come by the chatzah that belongs inside mizbeach, even though the leftovers go on the outside mizbeach, if you took the first 4 zrikas and you did it out, the first zrika did it outside, it'll be possible. So we see that svara doesn't hold water. The need to be like kippur. Gemara says, no, that doesn't bother me. I would still think when it comes to chatas behemoth, if you did it above the line, it's good enough because the blood ends up on the bottom. What about those chatos you did in the inner mizbeach? And if you did it in the outer mizbeach, it's possible, even though the blood ends up in the outer mizbeach, the shiraim. Over there, the inner mizbeach does not finish the job and it needs more. There's a few stages there in the job. We'll soon see what that few stages is. When it comes to the elyonim, when it comes to the elyonim, that finishes the job above, and therefore it has nothing to do with the behemoth. It don't do with the kabbalah that are done in the mizbeach. The inner mizbeach has a few stages. He didn't finish the job, and therefore, because he didn't finish the job, it is possible. Here, this finishes the job, and then it goes in the bottom part. We would have thought that would be good enough, and that's why we need the pasuk. So we want to explain what in the world does it mean, the markers and non-markers. Yeah. Yeah. So where do you go? So we would have thought that if he did it in the bottom, it's all right. That's why you need the pasuk. So now Rab Chaim is getting to his point. What in the world does it mean, mizbeach, marker, non-marker? What does that mean? What's the stages that you're talking about? Masha Enkein, Masha is marker and wow. This is what it means. Elu Shirayim, that the inner mizbeach is not yet concluding the job because the Shirayim has to be done by those kabbanas on the inner mizbeach. They have to bring the Shirayim to outer mizbeach. That is part of the process, and therefore you didn't finish the job, and therefore you have to do each job according to whatever it has to be. So that's a raya. There's a day, at least this Tana here holds that the shirayim is ma'akiv when he says that the inner mizbeach that the mizbeach is ma'akiv. Says the Gemara, Amarova says, Rabbi, if so, teisei bekal v'chaymer. If so, let's make the following kal v'chaymer. Ma shirayim hapnimim, madach the shirayim hapnimim, shesoifon choyve b'chutz. The shiraim ha-premium, the blood from the kabbanas that you brought inside. What do you do with the leftover blood? The shiraim you bring in the outside of yes, awesome b'tchil b'chutz like it. Yet if you chatchila did all the zikas on the outside, there's no kapara. So I can make halachem buvaket. Is hanitnin lemaila, the blood that has to be going, the chat of the behemoth which is done in the outer zbeach, but above the line. She'ein seifun chayva lemata. That is not ma'akiv if you have nothing left over. Va'asam b'tchil lemata. And if you did it lemata, and then surely it shouldn't work. Forget, I can make a kalvachem pung forget. Just the opposite. Ma'adach, the inner behemoth with the chiyuv. You tell me it's not. You tell me it's ma'akiv the shiraim. So madach, we're in a case where it's ma'akiv, and you need to throw blood on the outside. It's not stam a luxury. Yes, you need if there is. You have to throw the blood on the outside. Yet if you did the first stage on the outside, it's possible. So surely on the outside of the well, you don't have to have any leftover blood. You don't even need to use the bottom of the really, technically, all you got to do is the top. So surely if you did it on the technical part on the bottom, it's no good. Ella, I'll tell you what it means. Aim is bech premium markem bavad. Nothing to do with the shirayim. Everyone holds shirayim is not ma'akiv. Ella paroiches. Over there, by the inner kabbanas, not only do you spray on the inner mizbech, you also have to spray 7 times in front of the paroiches. So therefore, it's a different kind of an activity, and you have to do each stage, and you haven't done, you have to complete each stage before you bring it outside. And that's why the inner mizbech is different than the outer mizbech. And that's what he's saying. It had nothing to do with whether shirayim are ma'akiv, not ma'akiv. We're not getting involved in that. So Tanabam, we learned, it says in Pasuk, v'chila mechaper. We already had this Gemara before. It says in the Pasuk says actually, the chila mechaper, you completed your kapara. So it says the Gemara, it's a Kaddish. So this is what Rabbi Kiva says. He turns the words around. As if mechaper kila. Im kippur, then call it, if you did all the zrikas, you finished already the whole thing. If you didn't finish his rikas, like killer. In other words, the shiraim is redundant. The main thing is the thing. But how do you learn it? By turning the words around. Why turn the words around? You can have the same drasha if you just go forward. Why doesn't it say, according to, it says, im kola kippur, im le kola kippur. So you know why? I'm touching Pashat. Im chisar achaz mikola matanu lasaklum. The killer means you got to finish everything that's written. And only then is mechaper. If you're missing out, even the inner mizbech, we don't say, but the ever you didn't want kapara is good enough. You got to do each one. At the end of the day, they both say you have to do all the activities before it's a kapara. So my benaya, what's a chilik? Is a bichem b'shum alei v'chadam mashma'adim na yitak no chila. And chila is how you dash in the pasuk from the chila is the order of the title, or you have to turn it around like a kibbutz turns around the order. The Chadam and the Alma says no. Shirayim ma'akve ikebenayo. They're actually arguing according to Rabbi Yehuda. If you take the pasuk literally, v'chila, you gotta finish everything, and then mechaper. According to Rabbi Kiva, is only mechaper. What part is mechaper? The zrikas. If you mechaper, if you did the zrikas, then killer, you finish your job. Either Shirayim. That's only Shirayim. It's not ma'akiv. But the way Rabbi Yehuda learns, v'chila, you finished everything, and then only mechaper. So there's a big machlekes. And that goof is the machlekes whether shirayim is mechaper or not. And one of the Amoraim said that, but now we have a day. We were trying to find out a day who actually holds the shirayim and makiv. But we don't know if it's Rabbi Yechim B'Shur Levi. So the Gemara L'chei, it's time. I'll conclude. Rabbi B'Shur Levi, we don't have shirayim makiv. B'Shur Levi wants to say shirayim makiv. Why? The Rabbi B'Shur Levi said, he said, we once talked about there is a Tana out there that holds that shirayim makiv. So Rabbi B'Shur Levi is the one who thinks there's somebody out there who holds shirayim makiv. The Rabbi B'Shur Levi said, shirayim makiv, maybe par achar umaschil betchila befnim. We talk about over there that the blood spilled out. There's a number of stages. The blood spilled out, so they didn't have to bring another par in order to spill out. What happened? You did all the activities. You did all the zikas. The only thing you didn't do, you had the shiraim. So there's one Tana who says you have to shech a new part to have shiraim. You can't, but you can't just do that because the problem is shiraim of what? So you have to start all over again. Now, who would hold that? So Shmuel Levi said, must be that Tana holds the shiraim is ma'akiv. If shiraim is not ma'akiv, you want to show the carbon, just do the shiraim. The fact that you have to start all over again, what does that tell us? That the shiraim means you didn't do your job, and shiraim is ma'akiv. So that's what we see. He holds, there's a Tana out there who holds shiraim is ma'akiv. Says the Gemara, that's your whole raya. Shmuel Levi is the one who said that. I'll find you somewhere. Rabbi Yechid also mentioned there's a Tana out there who says shiraim is ma'akiv. So I know what's what. Said the Gemara, Out to Rabbi Yechon, let's say Hasvara. Rabbi Yechon is a holder. Somebody out there who holds Shraim Akiv. Rabbi Yechon said that Tanit am the Chemi. And the Chemia says that if somebody, if you shecht a carbon of if you sprinkle the blood of a carbon outside the base of Migdash, you're over for chutz. And the Chemia says even if all you do is the shiraim of the blood, you pour it down outside the base of Migdash, that's also chutz. So Rabbi said he must hold that shiraim is ma'akiv. Otherwise, if it's not really an avodah, you only avodas you chayiv for outside. So Tana Rabbi Chemia, can you remember shiraim ma'akivin? So Yechon also said there is a Tana out there who holds that Shirayim is part of the Zrikas, and therefore if you do that Shirayim activity, only Shirayim, outside the base of Migdash, it's considered Shchuti Chutz.
If you say Lidivre, doesn't imply like I don't hold that.
Yeah.
For those that say that.
And Rabbi Shubalev didn't say that he passed. He just said there is a Tana that the only explanation for that Tana who said you have to shecht up if there's no Shirayim left, you have to shecht a new par and start again, must hold that what do you call it? That Shirayim is ma'akiv.
What does that mean? He holds that. He's saying there's someone out there. Implies
that's what Gemara is thinking right now. Says the Gemara, El Kedira Omer will have no. What do you tell me? Like you just said, Rabbi Yechon is saying Kedira Omer. Not that I'm saying I agree with that. There's somebody says that. Not that these Tanoim here that we just said Akiva Rabbi Yehuda. Just that there's a Tana out there. No, other Tana. Nothing to do with Akiva Rabbi Yehuda. He could just as well be explaining that Tana there, but regarding Huda Bakiva, we don't know what they're saying. Next mission that we're saying davening. We talks about Shchitas and B'tzafin.
Satisfactory conclusion.
In other words, we don't know who said what. There's a lot of we don't knows in this Gemara. The only reason why we say he's a Mekayim davening is no machlekesen. Yet the Gemara so far between these two missioners, we have a whole bunch of I don't knows. So this is part of the thing. That part of learning is you come to a stage that you just don't know, and you go right it. Remember, that's how you learn. You don't get stuck and stop. You continue learning. So the Gemara. What's a chatay? What's a tzibur? We know the chatay yochid is chatay chaylev. If you bring all the other chatays, we learn. What's a chatay tzibur? So we already mentioned. So eat it Rosh Chodashim. The goat that you bring Rosh Chodesh, we learn Marshuas, what all these things are about tumah v'shalmoydes for Tevim, and they had different time there for which kind of tumah. Chitasen b'tzafon again. You shecht it in the north side. V'kibod dama b'chleishar b'tzafon. You makabel it with the kleishar standing in the north side. V'dom on ton arba matanas al arba kronas, and you have to spray it on the four corners. Keitzad. How do we do this? Now remember we had this suglagis and yuma about going to the right. So this is how it works. Picture, I told you the best way to do it is in your mind, you picture you're coming upstairs from the Ezes Noshim and you're walking upstairs and you bump into the Mizbech. Actually, the Machlek is exactly where the Mizbech is positioned, but let's assume you bump into the Mizbech. The ramp is on your left side, because that's Durham, and the area in the right side is where the Shchit is. So that's called Safin. Right is Safin, left is Durham. You came in from Mizrach, so you're standing on the Mizrach side, and the other side of the Mizbech is Meir, is where the base of Midrash is standing. So now, all about Kevish, if you're walking up the ramp and you got to make a right turn, when you walk up the ramp, you're on the left side and you make a, what's your right side? The Ezes Noshim. So the right side is the east. All about Kevish, you go off, so just like you have a Yesod, and then the Mizbeah goes in, then you have a few amas up, it goes in another amma, that's called the Seviv. That's the perimeter, you walk around, and then the Mizbeah goes on up 3 amas, as we'll see. So you go up the Kevish and you make a right turn, so where do you end up? Look, remember, the ramp is on the left side, so that's the south side, and you just came up from the east side, so you're on the southeast corner. And now you have to turn, if you're facing the Mizbeach, if you're facing the Ezes Noshim, you go left. But if you're facing the Mizbeach, you're going right. So so you can southeast corner. Then you make a right turn and you will continue walking around the perimeter. Is Mizrachis Tzefainis. So now you're walking along the east perimeter, right? If you're facing Mizbeach, you're making a right turn. If you're facing, but you have to know where you're facing.
You're already at the corner.
And if you're facing Mizbeach, what are you doing? Imagine, you're making a right turn. Right. If you're facing the Ezes Noshim, so again, see, they have the picture exactly the wrong way around. The wrong way around. But you understand? Here. Turn the page. Like sideways. Oh, so here
you're walking towards the.
You go over the ramp. You made a right turn.
But you're walking facing.
If you're facing the
north.
Mizbeach, no, you're not facing the Noshim. You're facing the Mizbeach the whole time. If you're facing the Mizbeach, when you get to that corner, what
Oh, the first corner before you reach the
You-
southeastern corner.
you reach the southeastern corner now, what turn do you make if you're facing the Mizbeach? Here, this is the Mizbeach right at the table. You're walking right here,
Yeah.
and what am I doing now? I'm making a left if I'm looking here.
Right.
But if I'm looking in this direction, what am I doing?
But why you moving? You're walking back.
Like this. I'm walking forward. This is the
You're turning
Mizbeach.
here. You're
So
turning
what
here.
am I turning? What did I just turn? I just turned right. If I'm going this way, I turn left.
Right.
But if I'm facing the Mizbeach, what am I doing? Look, right here, I'm just
Yeah.
turning right.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't talk about something.
You're facing inward.
You're facing
Okay.
towards the Mizbeach.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So all of the gabbers are funnel the and then you continue walking. Mizrachis. Then you walk along the eastern perimeter. You get to Mizrachis. Tzvainis. Now you get all the way to the other side, to the north. So now you're on the right side of the Noshim in the north, and now again you're making a right turn. Tzvainis, and now you walk along the north side. Maravis, you're going now towards the west, the base of English, and then you walk along the west, and then you end up Maravis Remis. So that's how you go all around, and. And that's where you leave the blood down. And where do you leave the leftover blood? On the southern side, facing the Beis Hamikdash, right? The southern western side. Where do you eat actually the Kodesh Kodashim? In the times of the Mishkan, within the curtains. Only Zichrei Kohuna. Now the Beis Hamikdash are only within the walls. The Zichrei Kohuna, only Zecharim, males. B'chol Machal, every Machal, L'yayim V'layla, but only at Chatzos. This argues the Rabbi Akiva who says until the morning. This is Father Messiah. There's a machlekes here, but because the Mishnah doesn't bring up the machlekes, and that's why in the Rishonim there's a big machlekes who the paskin like Rabbi Lozer ben Azayu like Rabbi Akiva, because here you have a stam Mishnah klar like Rabbi Lozer, but you have other stam Mishnah like Rabbi Akiva. Makes it very difficult to understand. Anyway, we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem.